All right, I got another one for you people. This has got to be the widest box in 4 states if you ask me. But what we have here is two 8-inch kicker CompRs and a ported box for a truck. This is actually going in my old truck, 2005 4-door Chevy Silverado. The back seat flips forward, box sits behind it, is never seen, so it doesn't fit under the seat. This one we went with 1/2-inch MDF because in truck boxes, you know, space is not your friend. Standard 1.5-inch star head screws that I always use when I use 1/2-inch material. It just makes it a lot easier, smaller head. When you're getting around over the edges, you don't clip it with your router bit. It just makes it a lot easier. Just the same process if you're new to the channel. 100% glue coverage on every joint that we do. Gapping on the screws are anywhere between 4 to 6 inches, depending on your material. And just hit it with a little bit of glue on the inside seams. That's about it. Here I'm using a stop block as a template for my top piece, so I know how wide my next cut has to be. Sometimes the table saw will cut a little longer, and so that's why I like to pre-do these. And this one I think I had to do a couple times to get it the exact fit that I wanted, that I was actually looking for before I started adding my glue to my two surfaces here. And just the same procedures. Clamp it into place, get it all positioned right, start locking in your screws, and you move on to the next step. And here, when I was telling you this thinner material is 1/2-inch, I'm going to show you a part where it kicked out on me, one of my screws right there. Didn't get it exactly right, so if you're going to use 1/2-inch material, something you're not used to, I would recommend outlining it before you put your screws in. Here I am double checking my depth. I like these subwoofers because the magnet does not have a vented pole piece of back plate. It's solid. The magnet is a solid surface, so you can get as close as you need to your back wall. Makes it a lot easier for you when you're limited on space. Now I'll start working on the port side. Took it over to my saw and get this marked and pre-cut. Add a little glue to it. Smooth it out with your finger. Get it all even. 100% glue coverage is critical. Clamped into place. Hit it with a little bead of glue on the inside. No silicone. If you keep your cuts true and clean, you don't need it. Here I am double checking my port width, 3.5 inches. Getting ready to outline my L-style port. Getting it true all the way around and everything marked out. This makes it a lot easier when you pre-plan for it. And I think here I changed it up. I went from the L-style. I'm kind of like stack. I'm not really a T-line style port, but we'll call it a baby T in this video. Some of you might not agree, but that's what I'm going to call it as a reference point, just to give you an idea. And I've outlined my port length there with the inside pencil mark, a little scratch piece of MDF, added my length up, make sure I was right. Now I'll go ahead and add what I call the sleeper trim baffle. Instead of adding your double baffle to the outside, I'm adding a piece to the inside only where the subwoofers will sit. Get the little 45 end on it, just a little smooth out the airflow. No nails, no screws, just a couple of toolboxes. Weighted it down overnight. Came back the next evening, hit my edges with a little bit of glue. Now I can get back on these port ends, mark the size that I want to put that round over on. And on the right is my test piece. Left side, of course, is the two pieces that are done. That's good to have a test piece so you can get your depth gauge right on that round over bit. Now I headed over to the crate of paint. See which style I want to go with. I chose this one because it was kind of resembled the stitching around the subwoofers. These little accent pieces. Masked off my areas that were going to get glue, so I wouldn't get no overspray. Trimmed it back just a little bit so that paint would absorb into it, so I wouldn't have no gapping when I screwed it in. And here, remember on the last one, the porous areas on this MDF, you got to smear a little bit of glue on it, rub it in with your finger, hit it with light sanding, and the paint will not absorb through it. It goes on shiny, then it dries to that dull red look. Right. Outlining my port areas, locations on the outside of the box, so I know where to position my screws. I'm telling you, this step is critical. It helps it out a lot. Now I'm getting ready to start messing with cutting out the subwoofer holes. Transfer my lines on the outside so I know how far I can go. Found my center locations that I liked. Now I can get ready to start pre-drilling. Before I do that, always double check your subwoofer cutout and your OD. I had that backfire on me once before, and I said I'll never do that again. They're showing you what, after that paint dries, what the color looks like.
Now I'm setting up the router to do a rough scribe around to check my OD, my cuts that I'm doing. Just dropping the tip of the bit enough just to scrape it so I can see exactly what I need, adjust it before I actually cut that router on. Just some preventative measures. You see, most bits have a depth gauge on them. If you don't have a bit like that or it's wore out, just get your piece of cardboard, measure the thickness of the material, hit it with your pencil, and there you go. You got your own depth gauge. You can check it as you go around with each pass and see if you're too far, if you're not enough, and so forth, just so you don't go too far down. And there you go. And I just started adjusting the router in less and less each time and shaving it back. Keep in mind, no screws. That's just weight and glue. Got that pressed together like that. Now I get back on the port. Here we go. I'm putting that light sand, just hitting that edge, and I gotta paint it yet, but just getting it prepped up and ready. Now I can go ahead and get ready to start installing the first port in. And you can see I'm using some scrap pieces to get creative, just to get that tight fit. Sometimes the clamps won't reach, and these things help. So that's what I'm doing there. Is why those pieces are backed up for, getting some extra pressure while I screw them into place. Get ready for the inside piece, and you can tell, or you notice that I did not paint this one, and there's a reason for that, and I'll explain that later. Double checking my clearance, make sure everything is true all the way around, 3.5 inch. Get it screwed and locked into place. Now I'm getting ready to start lining up my 45s, and you have to keep the same width throughout the port. That's what I'm checking here to see exactly how wide my 45s need to be. This is a very crucial part when you're dealing with these ports. Setting up my my table saw miter, because I'm not going to use the fence. I'm going to use that miter gauge just to push it through. Checking my width, get everything set up, 45 tilted on the table saw, and made a pass through. Took me a couple passes to get the depth that I needed to get the actual 3.5. But once I got it, I used that as my template piece and continued to mark each piece as I went. Now when you mark it, you'll have that pencil line, so you got to keep in mind that's actually wider than the piece you're using, so you're going to have to take that pencil line off when you're cutting it with each pass. Got them all pre-cut and ready. 100% glue, because it's so tight in here I cannot use my brad nail or screws, so everything is pressure fitted in with these scrap pieces. And that's all they're doing, is holding everything into place. And I got clamps on that 145, but that's all I could get. Now I'm gonna go ahead and knock out the terminal hole, getting everything measured up, checking center. Remember, I'm still on the left side, I'm still missing that 1/2 inch piece, so it may look off. Go ahead and hit the hole saw, knock that through. Thank you, JD Customs, for that. Use it all the time, bro. Pre-drill my screw holes. And there we go. I'm just showing you, if I had gaps, I hit it with a little glue, some sawdust, hit it with the sander. But that's no screws, so they got little gaps in there. I'm gonna knock that one out, and that's just pressure holding it into place. Every little bit helps for that smoother airflow. Now I'm going to show you why I didn't paint that. You're only going to paint what you can see through the port, and that's when I'm holding that pencil up and getting as far to the right as I can. Once I can't see the pencil, I make my mark, draw it down there, and all I need to do is paint from that mark back out to the port mouth. Save you time, save you on paint, and in the end, save you money. Here, this paint does not cover up the pencil mark, so I had to sand it back down, get that pencil mark out, and then repaint everything. I don't know what it was, but some paints are like that. Some come cover right up, and then some don't. Now I'm getting ready to outline and mark the port area for the top piece, which is actually the back piece, and I did it backwards. I'll show you. I think I showed it in there, I'm not for sure. It should have been flipped the other way. So when I put it back on, I had to take that newspaper off and repaint another L section on that top end. It wasn't nothing about maybe 2 inches that you could see, but it was enough for me. Port won't be seen, the box won't be seen. It's gonna be locked behind the seat. Only heard, not seen. 100% glue coverage. And let's go to Clamp Town, baby. Screws secured into place. What am I doing here? Oh, getting ready for bracing. 1.25 inch wooden dowels. That's what I'm doing here. A little blur here. I think my jam was on. I was probably trying to get my shoulder lean in. Get everything sanded down. Everything crispy. Just a smooth look. It just helps. It just trust me, sanding helps tremendously. Getting your edges right. Hit it with a small round over, nothing major. Whatever the bit didn't get, I hit it with my just by hand, some 80 grit sandpaper. Go ahead and mask this off, and I rounded off the port. So I'll go ahead and get those edges right. Added those 4 corner pieces, and I cut with my razor blade just to get that rounded contour. You can see it take the sharp edge out. All cosmetic. Masked everything off with newspaper, and then lightly hit that. I think I hit that 2 or 3 different coats. Again, I didn't even hit this with glue. I didn't even do that on this one. I just left it like that. Turned out pretty nice. See the back magnet, no pole piece, no venting. Those terminals actually hold 8 gauge wire. I think I showed that later on. And this is, I'm just showing you guys this. I already got the measurements. Everything's already cut, but just for your visual knowledge, that way you can see it. Tell the next person. Set them in place, mark my screw holes, tapped them to mark so the drill bit doesn't walk off. Just hit them at a slight angle all the way through. Now I'm gonna go ahead and beef up my terminal cups like I always do. Disassemble them. Cut those little push-ons. Just cut the leg off and just keep that little square piece, because that's all I'll use. And I have yet, like I said, I've yet to have problems doing it this way. Reached on the shelf for the old car audio book. Show you how I'm going to wire them. Since they are dual 2. Yeah, go ahead and go dual 2. Get them wired down. There it is. That's what I'm showing, that 8 gauge. I went with 12 gauge. That's for the most part what I use on majority of my subs. Especially these aren't going to be having a lot of power, but it's OFC, so that always helps. Just in case you thought it was line, there you go. Getting them wired on up. Wired together, and then the 2 wires out to the terminal cup. Get that 2 on load. Quick little eye connectors on there. Now I'll start reassembling the terminal cup. Get them all nice and snug. Screw that in. No, yeah, add the weather stripping. That's right, because there's no fabric. Hit it with a little weather stripping around the edges. Get it all sealed up with no air leaks. Double checking the final impedance load, and we are good. I was getting ready to screw these into place using some 1 1/4 coarse wood screws, and then I had another thought. It happens like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint the recess part red to just put a little accent in it. Just like I said, to bring a little accent piece to the red stitching kind of tied together. Won't be seen, but it's just something cosmetic. It looks good. And in here I was explaining I had a little overspray where the paint absorbed into that porous wood on the edges, on the corners where it got up under the tape. And all I did was just hit it with the edge of my knife. Just rough, that's a light scrape is all I'm doing, nothing hard and heavy. Blade standing at a 90-degree angle and just walking it all the way around, and it takes that off. It takes that little paint off the edge of it just to give it a cleaner look. It's attention to detail, that's all it is. Little minor stuff. It goes a long way, trust me. Yeah, these little accent pieces turned out nice. Now I can go ahead and put these back into place. Here I am showing the clutch on my drills. I set them real low, and I tighten all of my screws in by hand. And I did not have to add any weather stripping to the back of these subs because they come with a factory foam sealant around these. And that's why I did not show that step in here. And there we go, finished product. Again, it won't be wrapped, it's behind the seat. It'll never be seen, only heard. So that's why we went raw. I think all the boxes I've done for my truck have been raw. And at the time somebody hears it, or they go for a ride, or this, that, and the other, they hear I got a box for this type truck, it sells like no time. And I don't know what's going on with it, if it's just not something that's built. But this is, I think, the 4th box I built for this truck. Got that one knocked out, and on to the next one.